settle in. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Shawnya Harris, and I am the Larry D. and Brenda A. Thompson Curator of African American and African Diasporic Art here at the Georgia Museum of Art. To begin our program, I'd like to invite our university president to the podium. So please join me in welcoming the 22nd president of the University of Georgia, Jere Morehead.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I appreciate all of you being here this evening, and I want to just begin this event by saying thank you. Thank you for being here as we return to an in-person event at the Georgia Museum of Art, and an important event, the Georgia Museum's Black History Celebration. Through the pandemic, we have lost so many opportunities to be together and to be sociable and to share with each other. And so when we have the chance this evening to have an event of this nature, it really is a joyous occasion. Shortly, Dr. Harris, who serves as the Larry D. and Brenda Thompson Curator of African American and African Diasporic Arts, she's going to present the Thompson Award to Lou Stovall, and we're so glad that you are with us this evening. This award is an important award for this institution and this museum, as well as this position that Dr. Harris holds. And all of that is made possible by the generous support of Larry and Brenda Thompson. I have had the opportunity to know them since I was a very young man, when Larry was my boss, when I served as an assistant United States attorney a long, long time ago. He was also very young at the time, and he still looks young. But it is wonderful that Brenda and Larry have shared their love for African American artists with the world, and their generosity has made this event, the work in this museum, and the work of this institution possible. So I thank both of you, and please join me in thanking. Tonight's event is about celebrating the contributions of African American artists, but it's also made possible by those who have made contributions to cultural education and service. This is recognized through the Lillian C. Lynch Citation. There have been a number of distinguished recipients of this award in the past, and tonight we look forward to adding the name of Doris Derby to that group of award winners. Unfortunately, Doris passed away earlier this week, but I want to offer my deepest sympathies to her family, and specifically to her husband, Bob, who is with us this evening. And I want to thank you, Bob, for being here. So, let's get on with a wonderful event, followed by a delightful reception. Thank all of you for being here this evening. And as they say, let's get on with the show. Thank you.
Thank you, President Morehead, for opening up for us. I have never had such a distinguished opening act. So we will continue to move right along. My name is Freda Scott Giles. I'm chair of the committee for this event. And some of you are familiar with this event, and you're sitting there going, this isn't February. This is not February. What's going on here? And some of you, this is a new experience for you, so it's a little different. Like everyone else, we were affected by the pandemic. And so we had to change the way we do things this year. So I don't know what's going to happen next year, but all I can say is I hope there's no pandemic. But we're happy to be here. We're thankful to be face-to-face again at last. We're thankful for this fellowship and the joy of association and interaction together. As President Morehead said, we celebrate Mr. Stovall, and we're so blessed that he's here. And we also celebrate in our hearts Dr. Derby, who is walking with the ancestors, and we hope that she is happy with us in this event. I'd like to acknowledge some people who are here, some guests. Is Dr. Libby B. Morris here? Director and Zella B. Miller, Distinguished Professor of Higher Education. Hi, Dr. Miller. Everybody look at Dr. Miller. She is a great contributor to the educational life of this campus. The Honorable Deborah Gonzalez, I did see her here. Honorable Deborah. Thank you. Our district attorney. Nobody better come up here and slap me. But anyway, we thank everyone for supporting this event and our wonderful sponsors, without whom this would not be possible. I'd like to take a moment to thank the event committee. They're listed in the program, and I'd like you to turn to the back of your program, and if you would please stand when I call your name. So I know some could not be here this evening. Monica W. Parker, our Lynch liaison. Just stand and remain standing. Lydia Alexander. Linda Bigelow. I know Linda's here. Sig Byrd Jr. I know Sig is here. A.C. Woodbrooks Camp. Honorable Deborah Gonzalez. Jeffrey Goodman, Bree Hayes, Sage Kincaid, I think Sage is out of town, Chanel LeBoy, Chanel's not here, Sarah Peterson, Shanara Sexton, she is probably out of town too. I'd like to add two more names. Michelle Turner, who is she's really the brains of the outfit. And the wonderful Shawnya Harris, who is... So just Mama, thank you. You can sit down. Okay. The love that goes into this event is what I'd like to emphasize. We sit and we fold programs together, and we plan and we think and we talk about food, and we do all these things together, and it has been just a joy to be with this committee. So moving on, I have so many things. Michelle has given me assignments. So you can, at the reception, which is immediately following in the lobby, and after, on your way out, if you would please stop by the check-in table. We have beautiful favors for you, note cards that were designed by Mr. Stovall, but have a little surprise. Now, take your program and open it.
Oh my goodness.
A keepsake for you. Mr. Stovall's work, and you will see that this particular work we chose as the theme for the reception, so you'll be seeing this a lot. But we are so blessed to have his work and have that available to us. And those of you who haven't seen it in the gallery upstairs, please do go and see it. Also, I'm to remind you that the museum shop will be open, and we love your money. We know that you gave us money, but we love some more money. And so you can purchase things in the museum shop. Also, we have poetry by Mr. Stovall, and he has graciously signed copies of the book. So please go and check that out. So I think I've done everything. Nope, one more. This is the last one. Tonight's awardees and past award recipients, and we're very thankful to have you in attendance, those of you who are past recipients. All presenters and speakers, please remain in the auditorium immediately following the presentation for a few photos. And we'll try to handle it as expeditiously as possible. Now, I have done my job. And as we're going to begin the way we traditionally begin, by standing and singing the first verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Before you stand, last time we were together, we tried all three verses. Didn't go so well. So we're just going to do the first verse. But the verses 2 and 3 are in there. Please take the time to read those verses. This is a song of remembrance, of hope, of courage, and think about the people of Ukraine as well. Because there's a line in there, we have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading through the blood of the slaughter. So we won't be singing that verse, but think about all the people who are making the journey, the perilous journey toward freedom. So if everyone please stand. I'll start us off. I sing in the key of me.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of And now we welcome Ms. Shawnya Jackson-Sheets, who is president of the Athens, Georgia chapter of Lynch Incorporated.
Thank you so much, Ms. Giles, and good evening to each of you. The Lillian C. Lynch Citation honors an African-American leader who has made a significant contribution to African-American cultural education and service. The late Mrs. Lillian Lynch was a charter member of the Athens, Georgia chapter of the Lynch Incorporated. She was dedicated to the arts and was an advocate for cultural education in Athens and in the Northeast Georgia community. We have a number of members of the Lynch Incorporated with us this evening, and I would like to invite each of them to please stand at this time to be recognized. Thank you. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the past recipients of this award as well. If any past recipients are here, please stand at this time. This year's recipient of the 2022 Lillian C. Lynch Citation is the late Dr. Doris A. Derby. Dr. Doris Derby was an administrator, professor, documentary photographer, speaker, and author who earned her bachelor's from Hunter College and PhD from the University of Illinois. Dr. Derby was also a member of the Atlanta, Georgia chapter of the Lynch Incorporated. She was one of the many organizers of the March on Washington of 1963. As a civil rights movement veteran, her work has been recognized in many print, online publications, and documentaries as well. She was also the author of several books, with her latest book titled Patchwork Painting, Poems and Prose, scheduled to be released later this year. According to Dr. Derby's bio, Dr. Derby's photographs, which focus on the civil rights movements and the daily struggles of African Americans, especially in the South, have been exhibited through the nation's museums, galleries, universities, public institutions, libraries, art centers, and other diverse communities, including the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, the Crayon Arts Museum in Illinois, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., the Rose Library of Emory University, the Art Gallery of Jackson State University, and the Turner Contemporary Art Museum in Margate, England, among many others. The work she has submitted is vital American history, and it serves to document an era that has been a lot of times omitted, sometimes misrepresented, and is unknown to many or long forgotten by others. As a photographer, she made a long-term commitment to availing these images to the public and to the private collector's world. Before her passing, Dr. Derby resided in Atlanta with her husband, actor and Army veteran Mr. Bob Banks, who's present with us on this evening. Mr. Banks, please stand up. And condolences again to you, Mr. Banks, and to your entire family. morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great honor to present to you Ms. Lois Richardson, President of the Atlanta, Georgia chapter of the Lynch Incorporated and dear friend of Dr. Derby, who will accept the 2022 Lillian Lynch Citation Award posthumously on behalf of the late Dr. Doris A. Derby. Ms. Richardson.
Thank you, President Jackson Sheets, for introducing Dr. Doris A. Derby's body of work. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Please allow me to acknowledge the presence of President Morehead, to the museum staff and organizers of this event, to Mr. Stovall, a recipient, my dear Lynch sisters, and all who are gathered. The writer of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, states, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance." It is time now for me to speak in place of Dr. Dorothy Derby. Thank you to the committee for selecting Dr. Doris A. Derby for this prestigious Lillian C. Lynch Citation Award. I am deeply humbled to accept this award in memory of Dr. Doris A. Derby. I've titled this acceptance, "If God So Sees Fit." If Dr. Derby was physically present with us this evening, she would want to share this award with her husband of many years, Mr. Bob Banks, for it was he from which she drew her strength. His unconditional love and support allowed her to soar to unimaginable heights. And if God so sees fit, and whatever portion of the award is left, she would want to share it with her family. For you see, it was the early recognition and acceptance of her artistic abilities that framed her body of work. And if God so sees fit, and whatever portion of the award is left, she would want to share it with her friends, colleagues, and photography subjects. It is because of them that she is a world-renowned scholar, photographer, and expert on all things related to the civil rights movement. And if God so sees fit, and whatever portion of the award is left, she would want to share it with all of her sisters in service, most especially the Lynch Incorporated. For it was through her membership in this organization that she served with dignity, with pride, and with grace. And finally, if God so sees fit, whatever portion of the award is left, she would want to share it with all of you who have gathered here this evening for the celebration. Because you see, she was who she was because you are who you are. And if there is any portion of the award left, she would want it stored in the hearts of the global community. You see, it is through sharing that we stand on shoulders of greatness. It is through this process that we are lifted when our own wings have trouble remembering how to fly. Sharing is indeed caring, and realizing that we are not alone on this journey called life. Each of us is responsible to reach one other of us. Thank you for this honor. It will stand as the last earthly testament to Dr. Doris A. Derby. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. During our life together, we experienced many wonderful things, wonderful people. There are many of you here this evening. I'm sure the committee is delighted with your attendance, and I'm very honored to be here. Very proud of my wife. There are a lot of things that have been said about her, and I must admit, they're all true. Some people might have thought that I would be bragging of her many accomplishments, but I'm not. I'm very proud of them. Proud of her always. And I try to be with her always. I intend to remain with her. I just want to thank you for this honor. She would be pleased, and we as a family are certainly pleased. I wish you continued success with this facility and the people who serve it passionately. I can think of no greater award. Thank you again for your attendance.
Thank you for those wonderful words. We'll keep your family in our prayers and our thoughts. And it's wonderful hearing the story of Dr. Derby's work and her significance during her lifetime, and continue to think about those things as we kind of go along on our particular journey. So the Larry D. and Brenda Thompson Award honors living African-American visual artists with a significant Georgia connection in an attempt to acknowledge historically overlooked Black artists. So past recipients of this award include Kevin Cole, our last honoree from 2020 who's here with us tonight, Leo Twiggs, Freddie Stiles, Larry Walker, Emma Amos, Amalia Maki, Charles Pinckney, and Harold Rittenberry, who was our first honoree, and also who was the creator of the Thompson Award that you see to my right. If any other of our previous recipients are here tonight, please wave. But I think, Kevin, you are our sole person, and I'm glad to see you here tonight. So for those who are not, oh, I'm sorry. Did someone? Oh, I thought I heard someone. For those who were not with us, speaking of Mr. Rittenberry's award that he created for the Thompson Award, I mentioned that I'm going to dub it the Pegasus Award because it's named after the winged, or it's modeled after the winged horse of Greek mythology. So I'm still going to call it the Pegasus Award. So we didn't put it in the program, but I think that's going to be what we dub it from now on. So tonight's Thompson honoree is Mr. Lou Stovall, who many of you have possibly met if you came a little bit earlier, and traveled here tonight with his family, with his wife Di, son Will, and other family and close friends. And I was really happy about this aspect of the award because, to my understanding, this is the first time that Mr. Stovall has visited his native Athens since in the last 8 decades. So I think that it was about time for him to visit Athens, Georgia again. And I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad that we're able to celebrate his importance in the constellation of great and notable artists And this fact is not lost to many of us. I often recount the story when people ask about, well, how did you come upon Lou Stovall? And I'm like, well, I've known Lou Stovall's work for my entire career, and his significance among African American artists, among printmakers, American artists. And it was funny because when I first got to the University of Georgia and we talked about the Thompson Award, I said, well, have any of you honored Lou Stovall yet? And nobody, a few people knew who I meant, but not everyone did. And about a year or two ago, our director, Bill Island, had seen an exhibition in Columbus, Georgia, the Columbus Museum. And he said, Shawnya, I just saw a show of Lou Stovall's work. It was great. And I'm thinking, yeah, I knew that. So he's like, you know what? I think he should be a Thompson awardee. What do you think? Maybe we should talk to the committee about it. And I'm like, it's done. So we're happy, to see the Stovall family here over the last 24 hours, and how they've covered some ground and kind of rediscovering the roots of the family and the family's history, and I'm happy about that. And also about their contribution to our museum in terms of loans, but also of gifts of art to our collection, many of which you'll see, not only the images on the program and slides and so forth, but also in our galleries, in the permanent wing, in the exhibition Lou Stovall of Land and Origins. So many people have come through and have really enjoyed the exhibition, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see that tonight. But instead of my customary biographical reading that I typically do, the good thing about being in the auditorium this year is that we can incorporate a little bit of technology. Generally pretty low tech when we're out in the lobby, but this year we can actually incorporate a little bit of video. And we were gratified to have one of our doctoral students, Mr. Nathan Fleeson, to narrate a quick brief bio on Lou Stovall, and then we'll invite Mr. Stovall up to accept his award.
The 2022 Larry D. and Brenda A. Thompson Award honoree is master printmaker Lou Stovall. Born in Athens, Georgia, the Washington, D.C. based artist has established a reputation for professional excellence and community building through his art over the last 6 decades. When Stovall was 4, his family moved to Springfield, Massachusetts. Originally working as a cook at the University of Georgia, his father had found employment at Westinghouse Electric Corporation, enabling them to escape the Jim Crow South. The artist viewed this move as his father's gift to the family, where they would find opportunities and a chance at a better life. Stovall's exposure to art came largely during his teens, with encouragement from high school art teachers. In addition, he began working with a sign printer he met while working for a local supermarket. He briefly enrolled in the Rhode Island School of Design, but would return home to support the family after his father's death. In 1962, Stovall would move to Washington, D.C. to resume his formal art training at Howard University's renowned Department of Art. Howard's program, a training mecca for numerous black artists, became a significant stepping stone for Stovall, whose teachers included noted artists James A. Porter, Lois Mailou Jones, James Lassane Wells, and young David C. Driscoll, for whom he became a studio assistant. Employment as a screen printer at Botkin Sign Shop in Silver Spring, Maryland, supplemented his income and knowledge of printmaking. When Stovall graduated from Howard in 1965, his level of production only increased further, and deepened his impact on the DC arts community on a variety of fronts. Immersed in the print culture of the local community as well as the civil rights movement, Stovall was a sought-after artist. Collaborations with fellow Howard student and musician Lloyd McNeil generated attention and respect for Stovall's skill in design and printmaking through posters which accompanied performances by iconic jazz performers such as Roberta Flack, Sun Ra, and Miles Davis. At this time, he would meet another silkscreen artist, Di Bagley, whom he would marry and partner with on numerous projects. In 1968, Lou and Di Stovall opened a printmaking studio, The Workshop, Inc., moving into a space on M Street in Washington, D.C. A year later, Stovall would move to a new experimental artist space, spearheaded by curator Walter Hopps, called the Corcoran DuPont Center. The space, which was the former home of the Washington Gallery of Modern Art, included exhibition space, classrooms, and a screen printing studio. Stovall managed the space until the DuPont Center closed in 1972. At that point, the Stovalls established a permanent location for the Workshop, Inc. in a converted garage studio behind their home in the Cleveland Park neighborhood of Washington, D.C. The workshop remains active to this day. Over the decades, Stovall has successfully worked with notable American artists, such as Sam Gilliam, Joseph Albers, Jacob Lawrence, Gene Davis, and Robert Mangold. In later years, he would even collaborate with some of his early mentors. Stovall has garnered various awards over the decades, including the Printmaker of Distinction Award at the Southern Graphics Conference in Washington, D.C. in 2005, commissions from the White House, the American Red Cross, Amnesty International, and the National Endowment for the Arts, along with several grants from the NEA. His work can be found in collections including the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the National Gallery of Art, and the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C., and now the Georgia Museum of Art. Inspired by love, his home, and the natural environment, Stovall shaped a utopic vision which began to emerge in poetic form and his work. Of the Land, begun in 1973, embodies his vision through a series of drawings and later circular silkscreen prints, which trace the changing seasons around the family home. Stovall sought to explore the harmony of humanity and nature by bringing together the spirits of his poetry, art, and the environment. Several poems and related works from this series are now included in the Georgia Museum of Art's collection, but also a recently published book edited by the artist's son, Will.
Promise. Winter's light of heaven's might bears its promise true, of endless lands and chilly sands and skies of lighter blue. Big old tree that dreaming me bared its branches true from summer's end and autumn's trend, remembrances of you. Free birth here, no plan to fear, bare trees have their due, of leaves in spring, sweet offering, and love I have for you. October 1974.
So ladies and gentlemen, let us join in applause for Mr. Lou Stovall.
Well, thank you to the Georgia Museum of Art for this wonderful, wonderful acknowledgement of my work.
I just would like to let you know that my wonderful work, the acknowledgement of, came as a result of my not knowing exactly what to do with all of the promise and skills and legacy that I've gained over the years. But if I tell you that Jacob Lawrence was a great friend of mine and loved coming to my studio to experience what I had done and the prints that I had made, not to mention Sam Gillian, Louis Delsart, Louis Jones. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. But all of these wonderful artists that I have worked with added something to the substance of what I had done. And the reason for it is that I wanted to share what I had done and what I had made. But also, it came as kind of a little ego trip to say, this is what I've done, and I'm pleased and happy about it. But more than anything, I am especially happy about the work that I have accomplished in order to share with you all the wonderful, exhilarating experience of making prints that became apparent to the art world because of the hard work of the artists who went before. So I want to thank Larry and Brenda Thompson for this award. Also, Shawnya Harris. And I wanted to thank also those of you who know the work of Lois Jones, because Lois Mayo Jones was such a spirit. She ran Howard University even though she was not the leader. She just thought she was. And I remember that there was a period when Lois came downstairs from the second floor and said, "Where is all this art coming from? Who gave permission to have this art all over our first floor department?" And I said, well, Mr. Porter, who was the most wonderful man ever, had said, "Stovall, go ahead and do your thing on the first floor." And I did. So I had Mr. Wells and his work, Lois Jones and her work, David Driscoll, who became the friend and big brother to all of us, and also Kay Pitchford, who was there at Howard at that particular time. These were wonderful times when there was kind of a blossoming of what was possible. And the artists that I've just mentioned, and some that I probably will forget to mention, but they're in my history. And I'd love for you all to see more of this wonderful work. When I started out as a printmaker, I wanted to show the work that had been done already by this array of brilliant artists, but also to learn from what I had already experienced before, what was possible. And the work that I had focused on, what was possible, came through making prints from their originals. I was fascinated with the possibility of making those prints. Jacob Lawrence, for instance, started as a young artist making his silkscreen prints, but they were a little rough, some destroyed, and I wanted to make sure that the world that I knew would appreciate Jacob Lawrence, who was without a doubt the strongest, most gentle man that you've ever known. And I don't know if Jacob Lawrence has made his way to Athens, Georgia. I suspect you've seen his work, but there's nothing like the work of Jacob Lawrence, who brought so many people to the fore because of his understanding and his appreciation of idea. And Jacob's idea had to do with bringing the experience and his knowledge of Toussaint Louverture so that we could all understand what Jacob, as a young man of pre-25 years old, what he brought was a series of experiences that we could all appreciate and triumph because of what he had done in order to free the mystery around the art that he had made. But at the same time as discovering Jacob Lawrence, there's also Sam Gilliam, who you should all know because of the wonderful abstract work that he had made and his spread of his influence, his ideas, his belief in the strength of color and abstraction. So I'm going to read some words that I've written that will make you perhaps understand the magic of these artists who have done so much. And just before I do that, I want to acknowledge the loving support of my family. First, my wife, Lou Stovall, who's a splendid artist. I recently had an occasion to Di Stovall as my perfect wife. And so it brought tears and laughter and so on, because so many people have experienced the graciousness and the wonder of Di Stovall. But I also want to mention Will Stovall, who did this fabulous book called Of the Land. And once you read some of the poetry that I have written and see the work that Will has selected, you will begin to understand what it is for a young man to grow up in a house surrounded by artists who have come to sort of understand and work with someone like myself. And I think that for you to understand and appreciate what Will Stovall has done and what he has selected, you'll understand it because of the poetry that I've written about the experience. And so here goes the poem. On the greening of the artist. I always thought that knowing morning was enough to know. That was when making art was all there was. I want to share my greening with you, my art, my music, and my thoughts. I want to share with you how I finally gained a sense of myself that I could live with. Being an artist is an awesome task. Most of us do not know how scary it is until we are too old to do anything else. But me, I grew on the thought that art is long, life is short. And I learned that under the tutelage of James Porter. Those of you who should know James Porter will appreciate what he has done over the years, not only with the young artists like myself that he taught, but under the influence of what he had done. An interesting story about James Porter is that after he accosted me that particular day saying, who does this? Who's given permission to do this? And he meant who had plastered the walls of the first floor of the Fine Arts building. And I acknowledged that, well, it was me, and Mr. Porter gave me permission to do it. But also, I had the experience of Mr. Wells, who had encouraged me to not be shy about what I had done and about my ability. And so, as I said, I grew on the thought that art is long, life is short. I thought to make a quick impression, to leave something with my name on it. But then, discovery happened. At first, I only heard the words. My heart in hiding stirred for Byrd, the achiever, the mastery of the thing. That was a poem from Gerard Manley Hopkins. I knew then that someone had shared before. Tonight, I said it was a magic room, suspended somewhere between first and second. Magic at first because it was my own. but more because it was a strange place. I could never abide strange as a young artist, so I worked at it, not intentionally just to change it. I worked on it because it was there. It was a place where an artist would want to be. And that is how and why artists make old warehouses, garages, basements, and lofts into special places. Excuse me. It is a magnificent power that we have, we artists, to find beauty and charm in things, to make special of a room that could only be reached from the back of the kitchen or from the third floor backstairs. That was my gift. The ability to make something possible is perhaps the greatest gift of all. And so I repeat, that room is firm in my beginning. It became my philosophical statement, my first aesthetic position. And I liken my situation to the existence of other rooms, like the L-shaped room. From a film that was passionately non-conforming, and of course the blue room, a room of one's own, and much later, a room with a view. Because as we go forward making our art, we learn a great deal from what has gone before. That room was a place for art and thought, a place where a young artist's life could begin. So I gorged myself in that beginning, packing the references into every available crevice of my landscape. I took the words and the hope and desires and the poetry and prose, the dreams, the opera, jazz and Mozart, a world unto himself, and John Lewis, the Thelonious Monk, and Beethoven. I shouldered the philosophies of the ages and learned to say existentialism and play chess for hours and days without sleeping. You could not have convinced me then that Henry V was not written for me, because I longed to hear the call, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. I took my grandmother's warning. There would be no devil's work of me. My mind was full, my hands were busy. My father had said, well, you had better be a good one. I had enough starting power to last a lifetime. Everything was for me, and I was for everything. Some things I thought about, some things I just did. Judgment was a game. Art was the name. If anything delayed, confused, or interrupted, the sacrifice was sleep, time to eat. Whatever could be spared was sacrificed for art. Like blues music, I was transported. Description of my studio. The warm black walls were hung with my paintings and drawings, and then draped with same netting. The ceiling was starred with album covers, and only strategically covered with the fishing net. I just wanted you to know that it was a modern jazz quartet that I was listening to, and Thelonious Monk. it was not so much a stage as it was a fantastic tent. One deep wall from a tomb that I knew. A few stolen traffic signs leading up the stairs with a diamond-shaped detour at the very top and pointing cleverly opposite the door because I was nervous and I wanted to be clever and I wanted people to understand what my intent was. At those times I thought of other rooms, 5 spots, Birdland and Storyville, red doors and shadows, and cellar doors. These are all old and bohemian caverns. These are all jazz rooms that we all have grown up in, or at least heard about through the music that was played there. I thought about the cellar doors and later salons and theaters. Some I knew from fabulous visits to New York, Washington, and Boston. Others I knew from the music that originated there. I came to love California, having never been there, with the music by Earl Garner, with Concert by the Sea. So I covered my floor with a beach-colored grass mat, one black butterfly chair, one easel, one paint stand, and a rolled up or out foam rubber mattress, which served as either bed or couch. I had friends who stayed over as often as they could. Andrew, my cousin, always seemed too large for the butterfly chair. His presence overflowed that canvas sling just as a memory of his affirmation of my life and style, and my choices overwhelm me now. Only my mother had more faith. To be valued is like receiving a rite of passage. To make someone believe is the second great gift. Well, we were young, so young to know that black bread and red wine was only a temporary repast, especially because I couldn't drink, because I was too young, and also because it hurt. It hurt my stomach to drink red wine and imagine myself this fabulous, well-informed artist. So now I can see that the little red wagon of Thelonious Monk's was just a state of mind. I could not think of that until now. In reflection, I see myself promising my son tomorrow, and later pulling him in our own little red wagon until the wheels might fall off. As Doug and Esther said, who were neighbors and friends, that, Lou, you're going to pull your son in that little red wagon until the wheels might fall off. I thought that he, my son, and later you and yours, should know the right and the legacy of the drawings and sounds of music and art. So I have cleaned the old wrappers to put away. This time, saved from dust, I have saved Il Trovatore, Thelonious Monk, Earl Garner, and Dylan Thomas. And by the way, Lee. I've saved Beethoven's 5th Roundtable and Mozart's 21st. Excuse me if I fumble over a few of these words. As I've grown older, I find that I'm not able to pronounce as well as I should. And I have saved the thoughts of Claude and Billy and myself growing up, and all of the Sams in my world, and Donalds and Phils and Lloyds and their parent Andrews, Jacobs, especially Jacob Lawrence, and David and Walter Hobbs, who are continuing reincarnations of the longness and the tallness of destiny. And I have saved the honor, the memories, and the hopes and thoughts of Jane, who was my student, model, who stood for hours as I practiced one stroke after another, trying to discover the mystery of a fading line, or as a quiet release from my efforts. And I have saved all of my friends and their mothers and yours and their mothers, finding beauty and charm in everyone. Some know, to feel that the lines and the sounds are cool and the hot and passion and soft as in a morning sunrise from music by the Modern Jazz Quartet. 3 degrees east, 3 degrees west. Thank you.
It's truly an honor to be here this evening. After 24 months, or after 2 years of looking at squares on a computer, it's nice to greet all of you in person. As always, this has been a great program. These past 2 years have taught me to be very, very grateful and to always say thank you. So, let me begin. Thank you to this great state and their support of this university. Thank you, President Morehead. You have been a personal friend to Larry and me and a friend of this museum for a long, long time. We welcome the Pinpoint scholars at the law, from the law school. The Pinpoint scholars are students who are sponsored in honor of our dear friend, Justice Clarence Thomas. It's a program very dear to my husband's heart. My biggest thanks, of course, will go out to Dr. Bill Island and his tremendous staff. They accomplished this evening with ease and with professionalism. Special thanks to Shawnya Harris. You've seen and heard from her. She's wonderful. To Heather Malcolm and Michelle Turner, these two and their co-workers do a lot to make this evening simply work. And as always, we thank the Athens Lynx for their partnership in this event. They're fabulous professional women. Once again, they have given us in Dr. Derby a formidable person to recognize, admire, and remember. Mr. Banks, we are sorry for her loss, but as you know, she set the bar high and was an example for all of us. Mr. Stovall, Larry and I are always humbled by this award, but we are honored at you being the recipient. Thank you for being here with your family. Black History celebrations are always warm in my heart.
It was Carter G. Woodson, a Harvard-trained historian, who created this celebration because he thought that too much of American history ignored the contributions of Black Americans. When Black history began in the 20s, it was called Negro History Week. As a child, I can remember my grandmother having us read from Woodson's book, The Negro Story Retold. She would always appear so satisfied after we had read, because she said we were learning about our people's history. My grandmother, who had only a second-grade education, was also satisfied that we could read, and she thought education was our salvation. Larry and I began this journey, maybe much like Woodson, to support, protect, and correct the narrative about African-American artwork. Along the way, we fell in love with every work we added to our collection, all 600 pieces. Most of you know that Larry and I were inspired to collect after spending years visiting the Atlanta galleries. This is a beautiful historical collection which came about in the 40s because of the denial to Black artists the opportunity to compete in art venues. We were in awe of that collection, and we thought we could never own any work by any of these artists. But then in 1980, Mr. Stovall, Bob Blackburn came to Atlanta. Bob Blackburn is a master printmaker, and he brought an exhibition of works to the city. It changed our lives as collectors. We discovered that some of the artists in his exhibition were artists from the AU Center, and that they created not only beautiful paintings, but they created beautiful prints as well. And prints had a certain depth that was different than some of the paintings. Larry and I didn't know much about art and about prints. And so we knew we had a lot to learn. There were lots of techniques. Lou, I said to one printmaker that I wanted one of his originals. You know, one of your paintings. The printer and I were good friends. He was very kind to my stupidity and said, Brenda, I'm a printer, I'm not a painter. There are artists who paint, who sculpt, and who print. I like the hard, tedious work in the field of printing. But then I said they're originals. They're all originals. They may be an addition of 10 or 50 or 100, but each print is uniquely different. They are originals, they're not multiples. When we first heard of Lou Stovall, we heard only that he was a master printer. He and his wife, Di, worked together. I said, we need to get one of his prints, Larry. And Larry said, yeah, let's do it. But then someone said, you know, you probably have one of his prints. You have Sam Gilliam, Jacob Lawrence, David Driscoll, Lois Jones, Samela Lewis. You have Louis Del Sar. Yes, you probably already have one. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we bought a print by Samela Lewis that you pulled in the 1990s or early 2000s. What's wonderful to us about the exhibition that Shawnya has curated is we get to really appreciate Lou Stovall's craftsmanship and genius. Larry and I have known his work through the beauty he has created in collaboration with others. The work in this exhibition is his personal. It's his alone. These works show his love of nature seen through the birds and the trees. His lines and his prints are delicate and his colors beautiful and bold. One reviewer said that Lou Stovall has transformed silkscreen printing from a commercial craft to a true art form. And when he could not get the effect he wanted, Lou would just make the tools to do it. Sometimes to get an edition of 50 prints, he would run the paper through some 500 times. Is that exactly? I hope that number's right. Printmaking is tedious and precise. It has been said that Lou Stovall, one critic said, Lou Stovall has inserted more art in DC than any one artist. His works, one critic also said, his works are beautiful and much like painting, and they are as much like paintings as they are like prints. Dr. Ivan so much for being here. Dr. Isla, I wondered after the pandemic if we would lose a lot of museum support throughout the country. But some studies are telling us that following the pandemic, there may be stronger desire to return to the arts. I hope that's true. And I also hope that each one of you will come again and enjoy this wonderful jewel we have here on this campus. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. I am not Bill Island. My name is Annelies Mondi, and I am the Deputy Director of the Georgia Museum of Art. Bill has asked me to pass along his regrets. He was to fly back today to attend this celebration, but after the 5th flight delay, it became apparent he was not going to make it. And my words are going to echo those of the previous speakers, but I wanted to start off by saying how glad I am to see everyone in person. It has been too long. I would like to thank Freda Giles, our event chair, and the entire planning committee for this much anticipated and lovely evening. And I want to remind everyone that the proceeds from tonight's event benefit the endowment for the study of African American art, artists, and history. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate and acknowledge our Thompson Award honoree, Lou Stovall, and to join with the Lynch in recognizing the civic virtue of the Lynch awardee, Doris A. The museum is proud to have initiated these annual programs and prouder still to recognize the achievements of these artists and civic leaders, and to stress the most basic meaning of inclusion, that all are welcome to the Georgia Museum of Art, and all are invited to find reflections of their imaginations, their creativity, and their life goals in the visual arts. In addition to diversity and equity, we value and celebrate tonight creativity, learning, and integrity. And those are of the utmost relevance at this event, where we join the university in its goals of inclusion and empathy. In the words of President Jere Morehead in his State of the University Address of 2022, the university's greatest ambition is to enrich lives, to lift up communities, and to address society's grand challenges. With your help and your support, and with our commitment to education through the fine arts, we at the museum believe we are up to those challenges, and thank you for joining us in these efforts to fulfill the university's mandate. Thank you. I now invite everyone to join us for a reception in the main hall, unless you're getting your photo taken.